Cahokia is the most famous of the Mississippian sites. It was an urban center, a metropolis. It had mounds, lots of them, and it had a relatively impressive plaza that is located right here in this enclosed space in front of the largest of the mounds, which is known as Monk's Mound. That enclosure does define space. People have argued whether or not it was meant to be defensive or not. It may have been defensive, but it also definitely controlled space and defined space. And that seems to be one of the ways that Cahokia designers are creating their architectural plans. This is a stratified site. You have one reconstruction of it in 310 in our textbook, which we'll look at a closer view of that in a minute. This is a reconstruction drawing because, as we'll see, there's not a whole lot of this site left. From the location in Illinois, the most impressive of the mounds is Monk's Mound, and that is on axis with the Grand Plaza. This should be bringing back memories of Mesoamerica, so we think this is one of the pieces of evidence suggesting contact or exchange of information, ideas. That plaza itself measures 40 acres, so it's pretty impressive in scale. In fact, everything here is pretty impressive in scale. It was aligned to the sun at the equinox, so the sun essentially rises behind this as if it is being born out of Monk's Mound, right back there. The wall that goes around it, defining the space, was rebuilt at least 3 times, each time using 15,000 logs. Much of the construction here, not the mounds are largely earthen, but on top of the mounds we have wooden structures. So what we're doing is using a lot of logs. The result of that, we do believe, is deforestation, which may have contributed to the decline, ultimately, of Cahokia, not taking care, essentially, of your environment. The thing is really large. There are lots of people who describe it in different ways. One way that I think maybe works is that it takes more than a day to walk across it. We're talking about a city, a substantial city in scale. It was larger than medieval London. Gives you a little sense of the enormous undertaking in creating this. It originally had wooden structures on top of the mounds, and particularly on Monk's Mound, there would have been a wooden structure. This is just a reconstruction, a computer-generated image, but that would have served a political and a religious purpose. Our ruler here is a divine ruler associating himself with the sun, and this mound would have been the location where he could have stressed that connection. Originally, there were at least 120 mounds here and 100 nearby, close proximity to this. There are often houses on the mounds. Those houses would have belonged to relatively important people, let's just say priests or members of the royal family. And it's pretty clear that the height of your mound was in direct relationship to your status as an individual. So it was highly stratified society, and that came along with the growth of agriculture and the resulting increase in wealth, which becomes concentrated in the hands of the ruling elite. This is another reconstruction which might be more useful to you because it actually labels some of the elements in Cahokia, including Monk's Mound, which is the name for that great large mound, and the Grand Plaza in front of it. It also gives us some indentations out of which it's believed we actually acquired some of the soil for these constructions, and it gives us Woodhenge, which we're going to take a look at shortly, and it shows us also the wall or the palisade around the Great Plaza. Monk's Mound is the famous one. It really is the largest prehistoric earthwork of the New World. Some people say it's the largest earthwork in the world. It was built in stages, and it's kind of hard to imagine, in fact. It is 100 feet tall. The base of it covers 14 acres. It originally had clearly visible 5 terraces. And by the way, the name for this mound, Monk's Mound, was named for Trappist monks who used those terraces to plant crops so that they could survive in their community. So again, a Western name, essentially a Western term, applied to a pretty substantial Native American monument. It took, we think, around 22 million cubic feet of earth, which would have been carried in baskets by individual people to create this mound. That means approximately 6 million baskets of dirt, or 6 million trips from the site we're taking the dirt to the mound itself to finish the construction. It is flat-topped, and flat-topped mounds tend to be mounds that had buildings. We know that this one did. It would have been the place, again, associated with the ruler, and also the place of political and religious authority. The slide in the lower right is an aerial of what this looks like today. You can tell that we don't have a great deal left, and what is there is covered in grass, but it still can give us, I think, a little bit of a sense of the scale of the splendor that Cahokia originally had. So let me show you a scale shot. Okay. This is Monk's Mound. You can go there today, and you can actually climb. There's a set of stairs so you don't damage the mound when you're going up and down. This is a photograph of me when I visited it. I'm located right here, and since I'm still looking pretty good, I think I haven't actually done the climb up to the top of the mound yet, because it is still approximately 100 feet in height, and it is a great physical effort to actually get up there. So it still remains impressive in terms of its scale. The bottom illustration is closest to the illustration that you have in your textbook. It too is a reconstruction, but it matches more closely with our book than the other images that I've shown you. Again, you can see from looking here that these are flat-topped mounds. Also, they are sloping, and that's fairly characteristic, and it does suggest some kind of influence from Mesoamerica. It's also fairly recently been pointed out that when these are covered with grass, which is kind of what we're doing here with them as they're being preserved in the United States, they don't look as grand or as imposing as Mesoamerican monuments, or in fact as these monuments originally looked. So the best way of thinking about them would be to imagine them as our reconstructions do at the bottom, particularly filled with people, activity, and the mounds themselves, we now know, were actually periodically resurfaced, and they were resurfaced in different colors of soil. So if you go over here, this is a fairly recent reconstruction of what this might have looked like. And when you start doing that to the mounds, they start resembling Mesoamerican structures a little bit more, but in particular they start to look a little more grand and imposing, which I think would have been a part of their original vocabulary. We do believe that there are links, connections between Mesoamerica and Cahokia. We assume it, although we have not found artifacts from Mesoamerica at Cahokia and vice versa. The drawing below partly is influenced by some of the Spanish documents. The Spanish were at Cahokia and described some of the buildings, including, and these would be in the foreground of that image, houses of more ordinary individuals without a mound. Folks were on the ground here, and they would be rectangular in nature with thatch roofs. This is Woodhenge, which is one of the most fascinating parts of the Cahokia complex. It is a solar calendar, and it was created, reconstructed, based upon post holes which were found in the ground using modern technology. And based upon that, we can pretty accurately describe it. In fact, what you're looking at lower left is an actual reconstruction consisting of 48 telephone pole-sized cedar posts or trees. This is another example of more trees being cut for the construction at Cahokia. And of course, these too would have been replaced over time, so there was more than one wood henge that was built. The alignments to the skies were based upon the central pole. So basically, it was in the position of the pole that you would take the alignment. So for example, using another pole over here, standing here and looking at that other pole, you would be able to, at a particular time of the year, spot something in the sky of significance. We do believe that this structure could document equinoxes and solstices at a very minimum. And we also know that the fall equinox sun would rise over Monk's Mound, which I've already mentioned, as if the mound itself was birthing the sun or giving life to it. This is another amazing testimony to what it is that Native Americans were capable of creating long before the Europeans arrived.